Okay, so hello everyone. So ngayon, continuation tayo ng ating last video. Okay, so last time, ang diniscuss ko lang is kung paano mag-state nung null and alternative hypothesis. So ngayon naman is testing the null hypothesis. So dito madedetermine natin kung kailan ba natin nire-reject or not to reject yung ating given null hypothesis. A statistical test uses the data obtained from a sample to make a decision about whether or not the null hypothesis should be rejected. So, ito yung test na gagawin natin para malaman kung kailangan bang i-reject or hindi yung ating null hypothesis. Okay. So, a statistical test may either be one-tailed or two-tailed test. So, nabanggit ko na to doon sa last video. So, ginagamit yung one-tailed test kapag yung symbol na ginamit kay alternative hypothesis is greater than or less than sign. Pero kapag ginamit naman is two-tailed test, yung symbol na ginamit kay alternative hypothesis is not equal sign. Okay, so, ganun lang. The numerical value obtained from a statistical test is called the test value. Okay. So, sa test value, meron tayong formula para malaman yung test value. Okay. So, meron tayong separate video for that. Okay. In decision making, we sometimes make a wrong decision. Likewise, when we test a hypothesis, there is a possibility that we shall also commit an error of accepting or rejecting the hypothesis. There are two types of error, the type 1 error and the type 2 error. Okay, so type 1 error occurs if one rejects the null hypothesis when it is true. Then type 2 error occurs if one does not reject the null hypothesis when it is false. Okay, the probability of committing a type 1 error is called the level of significance or yung alpha. So, kapag type 2 error naman, yung symbol na ginamit is beta. Okay? So, typical significance levels are 0.10, 0.05, 0.01. So, ito yung usually na ginagamit na significance level. Okay? So, the level of significance should be set before testing the hypothesis. So, for example, so yung significance level natin is 0.10, meaning there is 10% chance of rejecting a true null hypothesis. Okay. The critical value separates the critical region from the non-critical region. Okay, so dun sa ating normal curve, diba, kung natatandaan, meron dong shaded part. Okay, so kapag two-tailed, dalawang tailed yung shaded doon. Kapag one-tailed, okay, so isang tail lang yung merong shade. So yung shaded part, that is the rejection region. That is the critical or the rejection region. It is the range of values of the test value that indicates that there is a significant difference and that the null hypothesis should be rejected. So kapag daw nag-lie yung ating computed test value doon sa rejection region or yung shaded part doon sa ating curve, so yung ating null hypothesis kailangang i-reject. Okay? Okay, so nandito yung mga steps in testing the hypothesis. Okay, so step 1, identify the claim and formulate the null and alternative hypothesis. Okay, so ito yung una natin ginawa dun sa first video. Okay, ni-state natin yung null and alternative hypothesis. Okay, so step 2, set the level of significance, yung ating alpha, and determine whether the test is one-tailed or two-tailed by looking at how the alternative hypothesis is expressed. So, kailangan natin ma-determine kung what type of test ba yung gagamitin. Okay? Decide on the test statistic to be used and find the critical value for the test. Then, draw or illustrate the rejection region. So, dito, mas madali kapag i-draw natin yung ating rejection region. Okay? So, step 3, compute the test value using the test statistic or formula for the test. So, again, meron tayong separate video for this. Okay? Sa pag-compute ng test value. Then, step 4, make a decision whether to reject the null hypothesis or not. And then, step 5, formulate a conclusion by answering the research question. Okay, so dito, mag-focus muna tayo dito sa step 4. So, paano tayo magde-decide kung kailangan bang i-reject or hindi yung ating null hypothesis. Okay. So, how do we decide on accepting or rejecting the null hypothesis? So, follow these steps. Okay, so first, determine the critical value using the appropriate statistical tables. Okay, number 2, draw the rejection region and the critical value. Then 3, if the test value or the computed value falls in the rejection region, then reject the null hypothesis. Otherwise, accept the null hypothesis. Okay, so let's have an example. Okay, now let's have an example. Okay, so dito, magde-decide lang tayo kung kailangan ba natin i-reject or i-accept yung ating null hypothesis. Kaya binigay na agad lahat nung kailangan natin, which is the null and the alternative hypothesis, then test value, and then the critical value. Okay, so yung ating null hypothesis is equal to 50. Then the alternative hypothesis is not equal to 50. So yung ginamit dito is not equal sign. So meaning yung ating test na gagamitin is two-tailed. Then yun dun sa ating normal curve is dalawang tailed yung may shade or yung ating shaded region. Okay? Then the test value is positive 1.45. So, again, meron tayong formula para makompute yung ating test value. So, dito, binigay lang muna agad para mabilis natin malaman kung accepted ba or rejected yung ating null hypothesis. Then, the critical value is positive and negative 1.96. So, malalaman natin yung critical value using the levels of significance. So, meron lang equivalent na critical value. Okay, so now, kailangan natin i-draw or illustrate yung ating mga given. Okay, so draw tayo no normal curve. Ayan. Okay, so kailangan natin i-plot si critical value. So, nandito si 0, positive 1, positive 2, positive 3. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. Okay, so si positive and negative 1.96. So, nasa pagitan siya ngayon ito. So, ito. Ayan. Then, nandito. Ayan. So, shadean natin yung tail niyan. So, yung shaded part na yan, that is the rejection region. Ibig sabihin, kapag dyan nag-lie yung ating test value, meaning kailangan natin i-reject yung ating null hypothesis. So, again, shaded part, yan yung rejection region. Okay? So, yun yung tatandaan. Okay, so next, i-plot na ngayon si ating test value na 1.45. So, si positive 1.45, so naglalay yan sa pagitan ni positive 1 then positive 2. Okay, so assume natin na nandito siya ngayon, si 1.45. So, since dito naglay yung ating test value, hindi dito sa ating shaded part, meaning hindi natin i-reject yung ating null hypothesis. Okay. So, ilalagay natin dito sa decision is accept the null hypothesis or do not reject the null hypothesis. Okay? So, ganun lang. Okay, next example. The null hypothesis is equal to 50, then the alternative hypothesis is not equal to 50. So, again, two-tailed ulit to, yung ating given. Okay. Then, the test value is negative 2.15. Then, the critical value is positive and negative 1.96. So, illustrate ulit natin yung ating normal curve. Okay. So, ayan. Kaya, ayusin nga natin. Wait lang. ating normal curve. Okay. So, dito si 0, positive 1, 2, 3. Okay. So, si positive and negative 1.96. So, assume natin nandito ulit yan. Okay. Then, si test value na negative 2.15. So, si negative 2.15, since negative yan, nasa left side siya ngayon. Nasa pagitan ni negative 2 and negative 3. So, assume natin na nandito siya. Okay, so since dun siya nag-lie sa ating rejection region, dito sa ating merong shade na part, meaning we need to reject the null hypothesis. Okay, so reject the null hypothesis. So, ganun lang. Ha? Tandaan, kapag nag-lie yung ating test value doon sa ating rejection region or sa shaded part, meaning we need to reject the null hypothesis. Pero kung hindi naman siya nag-lie doon sa ating shaded part or sa rejection region, we need to accept or do not reject the null hypothesis. Okay? Okay, so another example. Okay, so null hypothesis natin is equal to 50. Then the alternative hypothesis is greater than 50. So since ang given na symbol ay greater than, that is one-tailed, ibig sabihin, isang tail lang yung merong shape dun sa ating normal curve. Okay? Then the test value is 1.97. Then the critical value is 1.65. Okay, so i-draw muna natin or illustrate natin yung ating normal curve. Ayan. Nandito si 0, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. Okay. So, i-plot muna natin yung ating critical value. Okay. So, greater than yung symbol meaning nasa right side. Okay. Right-tailed test to. Okay. So, 1.65. Okay. So, sa pagitan siya ni 1 and 2. So, ito lang yung ating shaded region. Okay. Then the test value which is positive 1.97. So 1.97 naglalay siya dito malapit kay 2. So yan. So ibig sabihin tumama siya or naglay siya doon sa ating shaded part or shaded region. Okay, meaning we need to reject the null hypothesis. So reject the null hypothesis. So last example. Okay, the null hypothesis is equal to 50. Alternative hypothesis is not equal. So, two-tailed ulit ito. Then, the test value is negative 2.24. Then, the critical value is positive and negative 1.96. Okay, so, plot ulit natin yan. Okay, so, assume natin nandito yung ating dito si 2, negative 1, negative 3, 0, 1, may positive 1 pa yan. Positive 2, positive 3. Okay, so now, yung test value naman, so negative 2.24. So, since negative yan, nasa left side. So, nasa pagitan ni negative 2, then negative 3. So, nandito ngayon siya. Yan. Okay? So, naglay siya doon sa ating shaded part or sa rejection region, meaning we need to reject the null hypothesis. Okay. So, ganun lang yung pag-decide kung kailan i-reject or i-accept si null hypothesis.